The game is a far cry from the original Grid 2008, and I think it's very difficult to really match such a game to this one, as Codemasters has changed and the gaming landscape itself has as well. And to be completely honest, I've never seen the racing game community so split on a game. This includes arcade and sim racing fans alike. Regardless, I'm going to take a little critical glance at Grid 2019 and see what's up. So, to get started, considering the game hasn't even had a bug fix since August of 2019, and at the time of writing this it's almost 2021, and the game is holding up the white flag considering that Codemasters is abandoning the game for Dirt 5. There's signs and posters with Dirt 5 in the game saying to buy now, but I still think that this game deserves a chance. Pre-launch is something I think I might discuss. The hype around Grid 2019 was massive, considering the lesser game that was Grid Autosport, but I never played Autosport, but I did play Grid 2008 and Grid 2, and I'll primarily base it on those. Grid 2019 had the biggest advertisements of all four games, but that's partly because of the change in the way games became more all-around accepted by most people and weren't seen as this weird nerd culture. But even when Grid 2008 came out, it was still a big market, but not on the scale of today, and it was way before the times of microtransactions. Although it had some DLC, which only released on Mac in April 2009 and PS3 and Xbox 360 in late 2009, and the Windows, well, about that. We never officially got it, so you had to mod in the packs. So that's, I guess, perks of modern day game marketing. So generally, where Grid 2019 beats out all the other Grid titles is content. There's a lot from just the base game, and I haven't even touched on the DLC and Season Pass, which is actually not bad if you can get it on sale. I personally bought the Ultimate Edition for like $20 on G2A, but the content isn't terrible. I think if you strip down the tracks to just the layout of the tracks, I'd say they're really good for a quick race for about 15 minutes or however long you choose. Now, if you consider the props and landscape that surround, if they could have more variety, this isn't exclusive to 2019. This was an issue with Grid 2008, but in its defense, that was a new game somewhat, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But the game was on a new generation under a new name and was an underground darling at the time. Sooner or later, the game popped off and spawned a sequel. Now remember the part how I said it's somewhat a new game? Well, see, the game was called Race Driver Grid. It came from a chain of circuit racing games called Toka Race Driver, which is an old racing game series that lasted from about 1997 to 2006. Unless you count the Grid series, then it's still going on now. So what's the big deal with this Toka game? Well, you see, I think the problem with Grid 2019 is that it's not a Grid game, it's a Toka game with the Grid badge. Because if you compare this to similar games of that type in arcade track racers such as Need for Speed Pro Street, Gran Turismo 3, and even Need for Speed Shift 1 and 2, it fits in now. And I can imagine you're wondering, why bother saying this if the game was marketed as Grid, not Toka? Well, that's the thing. It isn't a Grid game. Although it is, I know it's confusing, but hear me out. If you think of Grid 2019 as its own game and not to compare it to Grid 2008, which I will later on in the video, don't worry, it's a solid game. A lot like Gran Turismo and Forza in the progression, and makes you want to complete all the events and get gold and finish it, and go for a lot more higher and higher runs and try and complete the game and get all the achievements and stuff. Another reason people really dislike this game is the way they market it as the next best game to Grid 2008. Sadly, with hindsight, we all know that wouldn't be the case. I feel this game could have been amazing if they changed the name, but from a marketing standpoint and a hungry fan base and a game series on life support, it's a lot like what happened with Halo 5, false marketing. And to be fair, this game has flaws, but it's by no means a bad game in a lot of ways. It's similar to the story of Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, in which it was hated so much that no one gave it a chance, and even 4 years later is still shunned, even though it was actually a pretty good game. Well, Grid had the opposite effect of being overhyped, and then when it wasn't the second coming of Jesus Christ, people were unhappy. And I don't think it's right to say that it's a bad game, not because I'm a fanboy, but because of the cult-like mentality that The Crew 2 had. Even now, it's a pretty alright game. And the devs and creators that spent hours slaving away just to be told, bad game, and not even to give it a fair chance. I think it's just a little bit of a dishonest way to review games, and the way Codemaster treated the devs and how the gamers treated the devs wasn't on Cyberpunk scales, but it wasn't exactly welcoming. Now, I'm going to get into the game itself and give you an honest review of someone who plays sim racers and arcade racers. I think the thing about Grid 2019 is its game style is like an old PS2 generation style, and old. That's what I don't like about the community, saying negative things for clout and money and writing the game off and just be like, hard game bad, and it's just a circle jerk and we're not getting anywhere and we're not making any progress to figure out what the deal is. And when the community wasn't specific enough about the game, we get annoyed and disapprove. Everyone wanted the old Grid 2008, but nobody really specified what features about Grid 2008 do you like. No one said any of that. They were just like, Grid 2008, you aren't going to be able to just bring back Grid 2008 in 2019 and expect it to work. Games have changed. The way people play games have changed. Media and how we consume it is a lot more different than how, games were on the 360 in 2008. So let's dive in. To start, the menu and its music. The music seemed to be an afterthought, I guess. Let's consider the Grid 2008 soundtrack for a second, because what it did was amazing. The soundtrack doesn't capture the world, but more the player. Whenever you race the boss of Grid, Raven West, the tracks are very fast and intense, like the track Burn Baby Burn, and all the soundtracks have different versions depending on what your pole position and time in the race. Because the versions at the start differ greatly to the ones toward the end of the race, it has a building block style of tracks, a lot like Doom 2016. If you want specifics, I'd recommend Racevic's video on the Doom soundtrack. In comparison, the Grid 2019 soundtrack is lacking just the same trumpet sample over and over and over and over again. It's so lifeless and boring because it plays everywhere in the menus after you finish a race while waiting for a race to begin. I've made my point. I'm going to move on to the menu now. The menu isn't bad, it's just meh. The sound effects are good, I guess. They're nice. It does revive a little of the old feel from Grid 2008. The actual look of the menu, I don't like it because it just feels like a soulless corporate menu. It's just like the Forza Motorsport 5 main menu, but slightly more appealing. I can understand why legitimately no one likes it. The Grid 2008 menu was dope, with your main menu going from a simple garage to a race team facility towards the end of the game, while the Grid 2019 menu is just like, I don't know, have some medals. Okay, let's get into the bread and butter of most racing games. The physics at the beginning, I mentioned how split people were on Grid 2019. This is why the driving physics feel a lot like Grid 2008, but it's extremely grippy, but it also feels like balancing a pendulum, but it never slows to the center mass of the car, and it feels like at any moment it will just spin out. Unless you crank up assists or just play with a wheel, but I've tried with my G29 and there's so much tweaking to the force feedback you need to work on, which I've heard with a proper setup, the wheel is really good compared to a controller, and I have to agree because the tires and surface of Grid 2008 have so much more texture compared to Grid 2 or Grid 2008 or even Autosport, and you can't really feel that all in just a controller. Speaking of controllers, you may have noticed during the recording, mine disconnects a lot. That's because the USB is a bit faulty at the moment, so my bad. Anyways, the feel on other parts, slide controlling and a slide or even drifting just seems to be basically forgotten about. I could see why that might be, considering the physics of Grid 2019 seem to be favoring more towards grip, because a lot of people complained about how loose the rear end was in Grid 2. Another small note is the clutch boost thing I experienced while playing, in which the car just locks up the wheels and wants to almost try and do a donut. It differs from car to car and is stronger in some. I'm not dumb. I understand how there's a little bit of a jump and it's a little burst of power with the clutch, but this is like not normal and it's just broken and it needs to be fixed. I don't know if they ever will though. Grid 2019 has a lot of content, from Toge racing and an RX-7 all the way to NASCAR-style oval racing and even Formula Junior cars. The car roster feels small for some reason, but I'd say it's pretty big. If you throw the season pass content in, it includes a lot of hatchbacks, new and old, GT cars, and even 1960s and 70s race cars used in Le Mans. And the tracks I talked about briefly at the start, I'm now going to get into detail. The base tracks and DLC tracks feel similar, but the tracks range from Silverstone and Barcelona, along with the streets of China, and even classic race tracks from the 70s and 80s, and you can run Alfa Romeos on Brands Hatch, and I could go on and on and on. But what I think most people have a problem with is the repetition in Grid 2019. But Grid 2008 had the same issue. So like I mentioned before, I don't understand why people feel this way, because like I said, Grid 2008 had the same issues. But I think it's a lot more apparent here years later, because that was the norm back then and isn't as widely accepted now. But it worries me that this may be the last of the goodish Codemaster games, because Codemaster was bought out by EA. Yes, I'm talking about that EA. FIFA 600,000 and Madden 69 420 EA. So I think we may as well hold on to this classic and try to chuck in our last bits of input before it's too late. I'm going to close this segment out with a Reddit thread that I think really puts the icing on the cake from the players and community. This is all from r/grid, so check it out. I'm going to mention, names from these posts. So this first one comes from Sir_Crimson17. He says, "Game does not hold up when compared to older grids. The deluxe edition especially was a scam. The game lost all its players within a few short weeks. No effort was made to save the game. Adding a couple cars and tracks they already had lying around while ignoring what people really wanted from the game is the reason why the deluxe edition, and indeed the entire game, fell so flat among the community. They had it all planned out. They even released the game, sell a bare bones product, and get a nice little bonus from people who are naive enough to buy the shiny car number 12 and racetrack from the old game number 7. Because you have them craving for more content. Oldest trick in video game marketing. True shame what happened to Codemaster over the years. I think now they even got acquired by Take-Two, which is especially death." Which is basically death. That's what he said. And another user claimed to have troubles on the Stadia. And this is a rather short one. This is by Not As Witty As You. "Loved it when there were players. I have it on Stadia, and the main problem there was people didn't know you had to be ready or that the leader could force a start, so people just waited and waited in the lobby until they just exited. No way to tell them without a chat function. Most simple thing, destroyed it on the Stadia." So, yeah. Doesn't seem like it's been too good, and this game was supposed to be cross-platform and cross-progression, and it all just fell flat. The content I remember when I first saw stuff was that we were going to have the seasons and stuff like that, kind of like what Fortnite has, or any Battle Royale game, or Rocket League, for example. We were going to have seasonal content. The seasonal content, I have it, like I said, I paid like $20 for the Ultimate Edition. So I don't regret it because it was $20 and, fairly okay. So I think that is the big issue is, the content isn't any good. And the fact that they won't, take time to put effort in is bad enough, because they have Dirt 5. You know, they already got your money. So why do we care? You know, we're fucking Codemaster. We can do whatever the fuck we want, you know? We made fucking SpongeBob kart racing. Okay. The SpongeBob kart racing part was a bit of a joke. I just want to say, just because you personally enjoy the game does not mean it's a problem. I'm happy for the players who still play and enjoy the game. But the big issue is the player count. According to Steam charts, in the last 30 days, only 126 players are online. Just to put that into perspective, launch week there was 1,028, maybe more, and 6 months before now there were 429 players online. I think the boys over at Codemasters really need to fix this game. It might still be alive in a few months. If not, it will be added to the list of grid games that flopped and other Codemaster titles that have been retired. I really would like to be optimistic and assume they would fix the game, but considering there's still so many bugs and glitches that are small yet ruin the game, like the showroom, in which if you swap vehicles too fast, it shuts down the menu and basically breaks the game. You have to Alt F4 and you're forced to restart it. But that's one of the lighter bugs I've experienced. Some players have experienced a glitch online where you can literally jump the start and fucking turbo past, and on offline where if you qualify first it puts you last on the pole position. That doesn't even make any sense. Okay, let's move on. Another complaint: the fucking damage model from a 2008 game. I cannot believe in 2020, damn near 2021, I'm saying this, but a game from a AAA developer has a worse damage model than a game from 2008. Keep this in mind. It came out in October of 2019. I figured you'd fucking know that, dude. I said Grid 2019 so many times in this video. There's no excuse. When I say a worse damage model, I don't mean less animation. I mean it's so simplistic. It makes fucking Hot Wheels Beat That from 2007 look like BeamNG Drive. I guess if you want to, like, comparison from a game, look at, like, I don't know, Need for Speed Rivals, maybe? I'm not asking for fucking, like, Burnout Paradise, but come on, man. And to be completely honest, the other thing is the other drivers' damage, they never take damage. They never have accidents like in Grid 2008 or even Autosport. And Grid's best part was the crashes. Look on YouTube for Grid videos from 2008 to 2011. It's a lot of crash montages, and for it to just be ignored is just bad. They want to reboot the game, and it's apparent they haven't changed a lot since Autosport. If they think they can make a quick cash grab style game and expect the fans to eat it up, they won't. And that's what that's why Autosport was rushed. They wanted the money. They knew Grid 2 wasn't doing too hot. And I don't think Grid 2019 is rushed, but I think they need a lot more than a couple tracks and fucking DLC cars to fix this game and win the community back. Alright, so I'm gonna pipe down and I'm gonna talk about the customization. The best of all the games with special vinyls and sponsors and a very limited customization, but that's nothing new. If you're trying to compare Grid to Need for Speed Carbon, it's not really worth it. They're just so different. But it's simple, but good. This isn't really a bad thing, considering the cars look really nice in their default mode, with the option of old vinyls like the Raven West livery from the original Grid. But outside of what I mentioned, I really, to be honest, don't see much else overall in the Grid series. I really don't know. Like, my script right here just says customization, pros and cons. It's very limited compared to Forza or Need for Speed. Like I said, like, there's real, I don't have words to describe it. In 2020, you know, like, we should have a better standard for customization. You know, vinyl pattern, 4 colors, doesn't really cut it anymore. Alright, so at this point in the script and writing this video and editing, I was getting very sick of trying to be funny and creative. I am now just really annoyed, and I want to go to bed, so I'm gonna just wrap this up. Moving on to the race types, Time Attack is basically what it sounds like. It's a timed hot lap mode with other AI drivers that really don't even need to be on the track. They just slowed me down and made me have slower times, wreck off the track, cause penalties, and just overall a fucking nuisance. The other mode is a classic circuit racing mode and a point A to B racing from any other racing game you've ever played. And guess what, boys? The most probably wanted feature in Grid 2019. Yeah, there's no toge. I don't know what you're expecting. If you don't know what toge is and you didn't try it, it's basically like down the mountain or up the mountain racing. And you have to go faster than the other guy, and you don't want to wreck him because then it deducts your points or you get disqualified. That's how it was in the other grid games. Well, we have grippier cars now, and you can slide them, sort of. It's kind of fucky, though. It's not very good. It's kind of like drifting in Project Cars 2. It's not really meant to do that. But regardless, there's race day. Yeah, we got rid of toge, but you got race day, bud. It's literally just a quick race mode that allows you to change the time of day, the weather, and the fucking series name. Like, you can have, like, the Driver Race Cup. That's what Shinyad said. And he's like, oh, yeah, fucking just in case I forgot, it's for race car drivers in a racing game. It's not the fucking, like, Jurassic Park racing series. Like, you fucking Neanderthal. Like, they're just randomly generated, mostly irrelevant, but every now and again, they're kind of funny. Alright, so this part isn't actually scripted, so I'm gonna get into my outro real quick, and then I'll play you guys some bloopers. I just want to say, this is one of my better videos. So please share this video. I've been working all day at writing the script, planning jokes, editing, and recording. It would mean so much to me if you guys could please just subscribe. You don't even have to subscribe. Just leave a comment, some creative feedback. That would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a blessed night. It was rushed, but they need a lot more than a couple of tracks and DLC to fix the game. Oh my god. Oh, that scared the hell out of me, dude. It was fucking raining in here. Oh my god. I had a coat fall behind me at my grandma's right now. I don't think I'll leave that in, but I think I might put that as like a blooper at the end or something. Holy shit. It was like falling and I thought I heard rain pitter-pattering, or I woke my grandma up, because I'm in a closet right now trying to record this. Because I spent most of the day writing the script. Oh my god.